Most men will navigate their entire existence in a state of profound and agonizing confusion, a self-imposed fog of romantic delusion. They will spend their youth, their vitality, and their resources chasing the intoxicating phantoms of love, validation, and a woman's happiness, only to find themselves shipwrecked on the desolate shores of heartbreak, financial ruin, or the quiet desperation of a trapped existence. They will follow the rules society gave them, the scripts written by poets and filmmakers, believing in a transactional reality where devotion is rewarded with loyalty and sacrifice is met with unwavering love. This belief is a lie, a foundational error in programming that leads directly to systemic failure. 200 years ago, long before the modern dating marketplace became a digital slaughterhouse for the male spirit, a philosopher named Arthur Schopenhauer stood apart from the hopeful chorus of his time and exposed the raw, brutal truth about the fundamental nature of women and the biological machinery that governs attraction. He presented truth so unflinching, so contrary to the comforting narratives men build to shield themselves from reality, that even today, most refuse to accept them. They will call it cynicism, they will call it misogyny, they will call it bitterness, but they will not call it what it is: a precise and chillingly accurate diagnosis of the human condition. By the time this transmission is complete, you will see with terrifying clarity exactly where and how you have been deceived. You will understand that the game you thought you were playing does not exist, and you will be given the tools to finally take back control of your own destiny. So pay attention, because the knowledge you are about to receive is not merely controversial or uncomfortable. It is the missing key, the operational blueprint that the vast majority of men will live and die without ever grasping. Schopenhauer was a surgeon of reality. He did not believe in fairy tales. He looked upon the grand, dramatic theater of human courtship and love and saw it for what it truly is. It is not a spiritual bond between two souls finding their other half. It is not destiny, fate, or cosmic alignment. It is a biological trick, a ruthless and masterful illusion designed by the will of nature for one singular, unfeeling purpose: the propagation of the species. Here is the first uncomfortable truth you must swallow. When you feel that electric, all-consuming attraction, that obsessive, logic-defying desire for a specific woman, that unshakable conviction that she is the one, you are not experiencing a moment of profound spiritual connection. Your higher brain is not communing with her soul. Your instincts are, in fact, running a cold and ruthless calculation. Your subconscious mind is assessing her youth, her health, the symmetry of her features. The curve of her hips all as raw data points for fertility, genetic compatibility, and the potential for creating viable offspring. It is a biological imperative masquerading as a romantic epiphany. And a woman's attraction, though triggered by different inputs, operates under the exact same dispassionate law. When she feels drawn to a man, her instincts are not registering his kindness, his loyalty, or his devotion. They are scanning for signals of status, power, resource, acquisition potential, physical strength, and genetic superiority. She is subconsciously asking one question: does this man's genetic and material offering provide the optimal survival and replication strategy? Schopenhauer wrote, "The ultimate aim of all love affairs is more important than all other aims in a man's life, gal, and therefore it is quite worthy of the profound seriousness with which everyone pursues it." He was not being romantic. He was identifying the trap. The profound seriousness is nature's spell, a fleeting chemical high that feels like the meaning of life itself, designed to compel you toward an act that serves its purpose, not yours. And the moment that purpose is served or the potential for it vanishes, the spell breaks. The intoxicating fever recedes, leaving behind the cold, hard reality. Think about it. How many men throughout history have immolated their careers, fortunes, their very lives on the altar of a woman's affection, only to watch her walk away without a second thought when a higher value prospect appeared? How many marriages built on the fiery bedrock of passionate love crumble into resentment and ashes once the biological imperative of child-rearing is complete and the passion inevitably evaporates? This is not a series of unfortunate coincidences. It is the flawless execution of nature's design. A woman's selection process is not guided by fairness, a sense of reciprocal justice, or even cold logic. She follows an ancient, deeply embedded selection program a biological algorithm hardwired into her very being that compels her to seek and secure the highest value man within her reach. A man's unwavering devotion, his sacrifices, his emotional vulnerability, these things mean absolutely nothing if he cannot simultaneously project the core signals of status, security, and genetic fitness. Schopenhauer observed this with brutal clarity. He understood that the female psyche is rarely guided by abstract reason. It is a vessel for the powerful currents of instinct and emotion. To label this observation as misogyny is a strategic error. It is to willfully blind oneself to the patterns of reality. Look at the digital harems of modern dating apps, where the top 20% of men, measured by status and appearance, are pursued by over 80% of women. Look at the cold calculus of divorce courts, where years of a man's commitment are systematically converted into alimony and child support payments. Look at the annals of history, where powerful kings and conquerors were brought to their knees by mistresses, who betrayed them for a man with even greater power. The pattern does not change because the underlying biology does not change. The modern man is indoctrinated with a catastrophic lie, that love is a mutual partnership built on a foundation of equality and fairness. He is taught that if he sacrifices enough, cares enough, proves his worth through tireless service, he will be rewarded with unconditional love and loyalty. But Schopenhauer warned that this is a fool's errand. Women do not fall in love with a man's capacity for service. They fall in love with his perceived power. They are not attracted to the man who tries to earn them, but to the man whose value is so self-evident that he does not need to try. This is why the proverbial good guy almost always finishes last. His failure is not due to a lack of worthiness, but a fundamental misunderstanding of the game. He approaches the negotiation of love with an offering of service and supplication when the currency of the realm is strength, not just physical strength, but social, financial, and psychological dominance. Have you ever noticed how a woman's intense interest often begins to wane the moment she has fully secured a man's commitment? How the dynamic of the chase suddenly and irrevocably reverses? Schopenhauer identified this as the tragedy of possession. The biological thrill is not in the having, but in the conquering. It is the striving for the high-value mate that releases the intoxicating neurochemicals. Once the conquest is complete and the man's devotion is guaranteed, the biological mission is accomplished, and nature's programming begins to search for the next objective, or to test the security of the current one. This is why men who cling to hard, who prostrate themselves emotionally, who make a woman the absolute center of their universe, are inevitably the ones who watch her lose respect and walk away. But here is the critical twist, the point of divergence that separates the man who remains a victim from the man who achieves sovereignty. This is not the woman's fault. She is not a malicious actor consciously plotting your demise. She is, like you, an agent of nature's will, flawlessly executing a program she does not fully understand. And the man who grasps this profound truth stops blaming. He stops feeling resentful. He ceases to be a victim of the game and begins, for the first time, to become a strategist. Schopenhauer's lesson is not an incitement to hate women. It is a demand that you see the world clearly without the distorting lens of romanticism. It is a call to recognize that love is not a fantasy of unconditional acceptance. It is a brutal, high-stakes negotiation. And the man who enters that negotiation from a position of neediness, emotional dependence, and a fundamental misunderstanding of the other party's motivations will lose every single time. But this is merely the first layer. This is the foundation. Because the next truth we must uncover is even darker, more controversial. It explains why the modern man is being systematically outmaneuvered in every arena of life, and it reveals the first steps you must take to flip the script. So remain focused, because what comes next is the point where most men realize that everything they have been told about their role, their value, and their path to happiness has been a calculated lie. Schopenhauer saw with a terrifying clarity what most men today, adrift in a sea of progressive platitudes and romantic comedies, still refuse to admit. The fundamental rules of attraction are not fair. They are not logical. They are most certainly not structured in your favor. While modern society orchestrates a grand symphony of equality, preaching narratives of partnership and mutual respect, the primal laws of biology operate on an entirely different, more brutal set of statutes. The man who ignores this inconvenient truth, the man who plugs his ears to the dissonant hum of reality, is not just playing the game poorly. He is already lost before the pieces are on the board. Here's the second brutal reality you must internalize, a truth that forms the bedrock of all intersexual dynamics. Women hold the ultimate, unassailable leverage in the reproductive negotiation, not because they are cruel or calculating in a conscious sense, but because nature, in its infinite and dispassionate wisdom, designed them to be the selectors. They are the gatekeepers of the future. From the moment a woman enters puberty, her value in the raw, unforgiving sexual marketplace skyrockets, peaking in her late teens and early 20s. Her currency is youth, beauty, and fertility, assets she is born with, not assets she must earn. A man's value, in stark contrast, begins at zero. It must be built, forged through decades of relentless struggle, competition, and survival. His worth is not inherent. It is contingent upon his ability to demonstrate status, acquire resources, and project an aura of power. This fundamental structural imbalance is the source of all the confusion and pain you have ever experienced with women. Schopenhauer articulated this without flinching. He wrote that women are suited to being the nurses and teachers of our childhood by the very fact that they themselves are childish, frivolous, and short-sighted. The modern socially conditioned mind recoils at such a statement, instantly labeling it as archaic misogyny. This is a catastrophic intellectual error. Schopenhauer was not delivering a moral insult. He was providing a strategic analysis of an evolutionary adaptation. A woman's so-called childishness is her hyper-focus on the present moment, an essential survival tool for assessing immediate threats and opportunities. Her perceived frivolity is, in fact, a highly developed aptitude for navigating complex social hierarchies and emotional undercurrents. Her short-sightedness is a laser-like focus on securing the best possible immediate conditions for her and her potential offspring. He was describing a mind perfectly honed for its biological purpose, to select the best possible man in the here and now, and to manage the social environment to her advantage. Look around you. The average man today is drowning in a paradox engineered by a society that denies his nature. He is commanded to be emotionally vulnerable and open, yet he sees women overwhelmingly flock to men who display stoic, dominant, and often emotionally unavailable strength. He is shamed for desiring traditional masculinity, while the so-called toxic alphas continue to dominate the dating marketplace without effort. He is encouraged to work himself to the point of exhaustion, to be a good provider only to exist in a legal system that can strip him of half his assets in a no-fault divorce and question the very paternity of his children. Schopenhauer warned of this dissonance centuries ago, recognizing that you cannot simply legislate or shame biology into submission. But here's where the dynamic becomes infinitely more dangerous in the modern world. Women have not just embraced their innate power. Society has given them technological and ideological amplifiers to weaponize it on a global scale. Social media has transformed human attention into a quantifiable economy. And in this economy, the average man has been relegated to the role of an unpaid, emotionally exploited laborer, simps, orbiting a woman's profile, offering up his validation in the form of likes and comments. He competes with thousands of other men for a scrap of attention from a woman who will likely never even acknowledge his existence, let alone commit to him. He does this because he has been sold a pervasive and debilitating lie, that his devotion, if demonstrated with enough pathetic persistence, is enough. Schopenhauer saw this trap long before the invention of the internet. He understood that female love, as a general principle, is ruthlessly conditional. It is inextricably tied to utility. A man is rarely cherished for the abstract essence of who he is, but for what he represents and what he provides. The moment he ceases to provide, whether it be resources, status, security, or excitement, the emotional foundation of the relationship begins to rot away. This is not cynicism. It is a description of a survival mechanism. Women are biologically hardwired to seek the best possible deal for their reproductive future. If a man stagnates, if his ambition wanes, if his power fades, she will not just feel disappointment. She will feel a deep, instinctual resentment. He has broken the unspoken contract. He is no longer the optimal choice. She will begin to look elsewhere. In modern society, with its rhetoric of female empowerment and its dismissal of male sacrifice will cheer her on as she does. Schopenhauer effectively divided men into two distinct categories, not based on their goodness or their morality, but on their alignment with this reality: those who serve and those who are served. The beta male, the man who has swallowed society's romantic lies, exhausts himself in a futile attempt to prove his worth. He believes love is a reward for good behavior. He operates on a logic of transaction. If I perform these acts of service, she will grant me her loyalty and affection. The alpha male, by contrast, understands or instinctively feels that his worth is self-evident. He does not seek to prove it. He demonstrates it through his actions, his ambitions, and his unwavering frame. One man begs for loyalty, communicating his own low value in the process. The other inspires a state of near-obsessive devotion precisely because his attention is not so icily won. You see this tragic drama play out everywhere. You see it in the office worker sacrificing his health and hobbies for a promotion, desperately hoping a bigger paycheck will make his wife look at him with respect again. You see it in the gym rat who painstakingly transforms his physique only to discover that while more women now desire him for sex, they still do not see him as a man worthy of commitment, because the underlying neediness that drove his transformation is still palpable. You see it in the simp who spends his last dollar on a lavish gift for a woman, who will accept it with a smile and then ghost him the second a man of higher status enters her DMs. These men are not victims in a cosmic sense. They are volunteers in their own destruction, willing participants in a game whose rules they refuse to learn. But Schopenhauer's philosophy is not a doctrine of despair. It is a diagnosis, and within every accurate diagnosis lies the blueprint for a cure. The first, most crucial rule of psychic survival is to see the world exactly as it is, not as you have been told it is, and not as you wish it would be. The man who thrives in the 21st century is not the one who clings to the crumbling pillars of outdated romanticism. He is the one who masters the brutal game of reality. And the final, unspoken truth of this game is that it is rigged against you. But only if you continue to play by the enemy's rules. This is the point where most men give up. This is where the truth becomes too uncomfortable. The required change is too demanding. Because the next truth, the one that unlocks the door to genuine power, is the hardest of all to swallow. It is not about women. It is about you. And the moment you finally summon the courage to face that, everything changes. Schopenhauer, having stripped away the romantic veneer from the machinery of attraction, uncovered a truth even more disturbing. A reality that modern psychology is only now beginning to confirm with its studies on social dynamics and evolutionary biology. The conflict between the sexes is not a battle fought on an open field. Men compete with fists, with logic, with displays of wealth and power. Their weapons are visible, their challenges direct. Women do not compete like this. Their methods are quieter, their battleground is invisible, and their victory is almost always assured, because the average man does not even know he is at war. While a man fights for dominance over the external world, a woman wages war through the manipulation of perception itself. She does not conquer a man's body or his bank account directly. She conquers his reality. Consider this fundamental asymmetry. When a man desires something, his primary strategy is to state his intent, to demand it, to negotiate for it logically, or to take it through force. When a woman desires something, her primary strategy is to make you believe that granting it to her was your own brilliant idea. Schopenhauer saw this with a surgeon's precision, noting that women's physical weakness necessitated the evolution of a different kind of strength. Their power is not in direct confrontation but in influence, cunning, and an innate, almost supernatural talent for deception. This is not a moral failing. It is an evolutionary masterstroke. In a world where brute force was the primary currency of power for millennia, the female of the species developed a psychological toolkit so sophisticated that it could neutralize and control a physically stronger adversary, without him ever realizing he was being controlled. Her mind is a finely tuned instrument for reading the subtle currents of human interaction. While a man is busy processing the literal words being said in a conversation, a woman is conducting a multi-layered interrogation. She is reading your micro-expressions, analyzing the subtle shifts in your vocal tone, gauging your posture, and monitoring the social dynamics of the entire room. She is absorbing thousands of data points per second, all being fed into an ancient precognitive software program designed to answer one question: where are his weaknesses? The modern man walks into every interaction with a woman believing he is in a partnership, a collaboration between equals. He is wrong. He is, from the very first moment, being subjected to a series of relentless, unspoken tests designed to probe the strength of his masculine frame. There is the compliance test. She will make a small, seemingly insignificant request, not because she needs the thing, but to see how quickly you will rearrange your priorities for her to gauge if your world revolves around your purpose or her whims. There is the frame test. During a disagreement, she will escalate emotionally, deploying tears or anger not as a genuine expression of hurt, but as a strategic smokescreen designed to derail your logical argument and force you to abandon your position in order to placate her, thereby demonstrating that her emotional state holds more power than your rational conviction. There is the investment test. She will strategically withdraw her affection and attention, creating a void to see if you will panic and rush to fill it with desperate texts, gifts, and pleas for validation, thus revealing the full, pathetic extent of your neediness. Most men fail these tests before they even know they are being administered. They operate on the false premise that demonstrating agreeableness and service is the path to winning her affection, when in reality, every test they fail lowers their perceived value in her eyes. Schopenhauer warned that women are instinctively crafty. This craftiness is not evil, it is the pinnacle of survival programming. The woman who could not effectively navigate, influence, and, when necessary, manipulate male psychology was a genetic dead end. Here is where the modern man walks blindly into the most devastating trap of all. He confuses a woman's attention for genuine interest, her presence for genuine investment. But Schopenhauer revealed the dark, paradoxical core of female attraction. Women are most powerfully and instinctually drawn to men who do not need them. The very moment you make a woman your primary purpose, the moment she becomes the sun around which your emotional world orbits, is the precise moment she begins to lose all biological respect for you. Your neediness, your complete and utter investment in her, signals to her primal brain that you lack a powerful, driving mission of your own. It communicates that you are not a conqueror, an explorer, or a builder of empires, but a man waiting for a woman to give his life meaning. Nothing destroys a man's perceived value faster. This single paradox explains everything that confuses the modern man. It explains why the nice guys who are always available, always agreeable, and always at her service are perpetually relegated to the friend zone. It explains why so many marriages crumble into contempt after the man sacrifices his ambitions and hobbies to dedicate himself entirely to his family. It explains the magnetic pull women feel towards the emotionally distant, challenging, and even dangerous man. It is not that they desire to be treated poorly. It is that his emotional unavailability is a powerful, often accurate signal that he has a purpose in his life that is greater and more compelling than she is. And to her biology, that is the ultimate aphrodisiac. Every interaction you have with a woman contains this unspoken power struggle. Most men lose catastrophically. She cries to evade accountability for her actions. She withholds sex and affection to train you into compliance. She flirts with other men in front of you to test the strength of your confidence and gauge your reaction to a threat. Schopenhauer identified this as the tyranny of the weak. Women leverage their perceived emotional and physical vulnerability to dominate psychologically stronger adversaries. The man who falls for this performance, who rushes to soothe and supplicate, becomes a willing slave. The man who recognizes it for the strategic maneuver it is, who can stand firm in his frame with amused detachment, becomes unstoppable. But here lies the path to liberation. Schopenhauer's most empowering truth is this: the first step to breaking free from any prison is to see the bars. Once you understand that female nature is not a personal attack on you, but a biological program running its course, you stop taking it personally. Stop being wounded. You stop begging for a loyalty that must be commanded, and you begin to understand how to inspire it. The final lesson, the one that transcends the battle of the sexes entirely, is that the most dangerous and debilitating lies are not the ones women tell men, they are the ones men tell themselves. Schopenhauer's most devastating revelation was not about the nature of women, but about the cold, unflinching nature of reality itself and the one true path to freedom. After exposing the brutal truths of attraction, power, and biology, he offered something far more valuable than a strategy to win the game. He offered a way to transcend it. Modern men make one fatal, soul-crushing error. They anchor their happiness in the volatile, unpredictable harbor of female validation. Show. Saw through this grand illusion? The happiness which we receive from ourselves, he wrote, is greater than that which we obtain from our surroundings. The men who achieve a state of genuine, unshakable power are not those who conquer women, but those who conquer themselves. They develop a mission, a purpose so consuming, so intrinsically rewarding, that the attention and approval of women become a pleasant but non-essential bonus rather than a life-or-death necessity. The great artists, inventors, philosophers, and warriors of history were not distracted by the chase. They were too consumed by the act of building their empires, whether those empires were of art, knowledge, or territory. To achieve this state of masculine sovereignty, you must build your life upon three indestructible pillars. 1. Economic sovereignty. Schopenhauer correctly identified money as human happiness in the abstract, not for the trinkets it buys, but for the one thing that matters: freedom. The man who controls his finances controls his destiny. He has the power to walk away from any job, any city, and any relationship that does not meet his standards. 2. Philosophical depth. The average man lives on autopilot, his mind a repository of second-hand opinions and societal programming. The exceptional man forges a mind sharp enough to cut through the lies, cultivates an internal frame of reference so robust that it cannot be swayed by social pressure or emotional manipulation. He becomes his own intellectual authority. 3. Physical mastery. The body is not merely a tool for attracting a mate. It is the vessel of your will. Discipline in the physical realm, in the gym, in your diet, in your posture breeds discipline in the psychological realm. Physical weakness cultivates a spirit of supplication. Here is where Schopenhauer's wisdom becomes a revolutionary operating system. The safest way of not being very miserable, he advised, is not to expect to be very happy. This is not pessimism. It is the ultimate emotional armor. When you cease to expect unconditional love, unwavering loyalty, or perfect fairness from women, you render yourself immune to disappointment. You move through the world with a powerful, amused detachment. The man who stops begging for love, approval, and validation suddenly and paradoxically finds these things flowing towards him. Why? Because by removing himself from the desperate, supplicating masses, he has become the prize. The biological theater will continue to play out, but he is no longer an unwitting actor on the stage. He is in the audience, watching the play with a deep understanding of its script. The man who wakes up to this reality stops blaming women and starts evolving himself. He does not resent female nature. He adapts to it with superior strategy. He builds a life so compelling, so rich with purpose and power, that women must either rise to meet his standards or watch him from the sidelines. Schopenhauer's ultimate lesson is a choice. We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people. You can continue to be like other people, chasing illusions and suffering the inevitable consequences, or you can step into your true terrifying power. The path is not about hating women. It is about loving truth, discipline, and your own potential enough to rebuild yourself in their image. This is where your real life begins.